This happened about 3 years ago. I was 35, and I took my wife and kids camping in a remote part of the national park. I thought I knew what to expect. We arrived, and the forest felt peaceful. Towering pines surrounded our campsite, and a calm lake was close by. Everything seemed perfect. But as dusk settled in, I felt something was off. I couldn't shake that feeling. I set up the tent while my kids gathered sticks for the fire. We laughed and joked. Then, just as the sun disappeared, we sat down by the campfire for dinner. That's when I heard it, rustling in the underbrush. I thought it was just a raccoon, so I reassured my kids. I wanted to keep the mood light. But then, something sounded closer, and a chill ran down my spine. I glanced around the campsite, but I saw nothing. My heart raced, and I tried to ignore it. Around midnight, I heard it again. Was it footsteps? I wasn't sure. The kids were asleep in the tent, and my wife was dozing off next to me. I felt a strange breeze pass by. It felt like someone was pushing against me. The night grew heavier, pressing down on us. I told myself it was just the quiet of the forest, yet I kept waiting for something else to happen. As I sat staring into the fire, shadows flickered at the edge of our campsite. I squinted, trying to make out what it was. The shadows danced just outside the firelight. Were they real? Maybe they were just trees swaying. I wasn't sure. Then I heard whispers, or at least I thought they were whispers. It was unsettling, like someone was talking, but I couldn't understand the words. In the morning light, I tried to shake it off. When I walked around the campsite, I noticed symbols carved into the trees. They looked like warnings, and I felt like we were being watched. My kids were scared too. They said they wanted to go home, and my wife said we should leave. But I felt stuck. I wanted to keep our plans. I wanted to prove I could keep them safe. That night, I tried to act normal, but the air felt thick with dread. I couldn't shake the feeling that Siguabana was near. My heart raced as I kept glancing into the woods. Shadows returned, darker this time. It felt like the forest itself was holding its breath. I tried to stay calm, but pretending was getting harder. Then came the worst moment. I heard a voice, a whisper, right next to me, just behind my shoulder. I jerked around. There was no one there. My hair stood on end. I thought I saw something move in the trees, but my vision was blurry. What did I see? What wanted us there? I wasn't confident anymore. The night felt endless, and I wondered if we would ever escape. I barely slept that night. Unease built in the pit of my stomach. The night felt alive, crawling with unseen eyes. I kept telling myself to think logically. It was just the forest, nothing more. But my instincts screamed otherwise. As dawn broke, I woke up to my wife's voice whispering urgently. "Did you hear that?" she asked. My heart dropped.
"Hear what?" I managed to say, even though I felt the familiar chill creeping back in. She sat up, wide-eyed. "There were footsteps near the tent. I thought I was dreaming." My kids were still asleep, blissfully unaware of the weight of the forest creeping upon us. I quietly unzipped the tent and stepped outside. The morning fog hung thick above the ground. It cloaked everything in a muted gray. I felt a knot form in my chest. I looked toward the path that led deeper into the woods. The footprints were clearly visible, large and human-like, but they didn't match any of us. They were deeper, the way a heavier person's steps would be. I didn't want to think about it. I wanted to believe they were just a trick of the light, a misstep of the forest. But as I followed them with my gaze, I noticed they led directly to the symbols carved into the trees. My mind raced. Why hadn't I thought earlier to leave? The forest was filled with warnings, but part of me still resisted. I called my wife outside. When she saw the footprints, her face drained of color. "We need to go," she said. The urgency in her voice struck me. Maybe we should just pack up and... Suddenly, a shout pierced the morning quiet. It came from the direction of the lake. I froze, my breath hitching in my throat. My heart raced anew. It was unmistakably one of my kids. My instincts kicked in, and I sprinted toward the sound. Running through the trees, branches scratched at my arms. The world felt surreal, as if I was in a nightmare that wasn't supposed to be real. When I got to the lake, I saw my oldest son standing at the water's edge, pointing. The silence of the forest was deafening now. "Dad, look!" he shouted. I rushed to his side. My heart dropped. There, outlined by the mist, was something. It appeared to be a figure, tall and shadowy, standing at the far side of the lake. I squinted, hoping it was just a trick of the fog, but deep down I feared it wasn't. Then everything went dark. The sky above shifted, and an unnatural wind whipped through the trees. My son grabbed my hand tight, trembling. I scanned the area, panic setting in. "We have to go back, now!" Just as we turned, I felt a chilling presence wrap around me. The forest seemed to close in, the shadows deepening. "Dad?" my son called, his voice trembling. I felt the air shift again, heavy with something that made the hair on my neck stand up. This wasn't over. Something was very wrong. As we raced back, I glanced back at the lake. The figure had vanished, but the feeling of being watched remained. We needed to leave this place, fast. I just hoped it wouldn't be too late. I pushed through the brambles, my heart pounding in my chest. The oppressive stillness of the forest surrounded us. Every snap of a twig or rustle of leaves felt like a reminder of what we were running from. My son tightened his grip on my hand, and I could feel his small fingers trembling. "Stay close," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I looked back, half expecting to see that figure looming behind us, but the mist swallowed everything in shadows. I glanced at my wife and younger kids, who were struggling to keep up. "We need to hurry, to the car!" We stumbled back through the path we had entered from, the familiar trees transforming into sentinels of dread. Each step felt like it was dragging us further into an abyss I couldn't see. As we reached the camp clearing, I took a deep breath, ready to feel a surge of relief, but I stopped short. Our tent was on the ground, and the gear we'd left outside was scattered. "Where's the car?" my wife asked, her eyes wide with panic. My stomach sank. I spun around. Our car was just a short walk away from the site when we arrived, yet it was nowhere in sight now. The winding road we'd come on felt like it snaked endlessly into the forest. I shook my head, unsure if I should panic or search for it. It has to be around here somewhere. Before I could say more, my youngest daughter began to cry, pointing off into the trees. "Daddy, look, there's a lady!" I swiftly turned to see what she meant, but instead of a lady, it was another shadow, darker than the forest itself, flickering just beyond the trees. My mind raced back to my son's exclamation at the lake. "Stay together!" I shouted, but my voice trembled as fear clawed at my throat. In that moment, my thoughts were interrupted by a strangled cry from the direction of the lake. I felt paralyzed, my feet refusing to move. Not again, I thought. My daughter's sobs pierced through my paralysis, snapping me back to urgency. "Let's get the kids to the edge of the clearing," I yelled. We stumbled over fallen branches and rocks, the ground now a cruel enemy beneath our feet. As we neared the perimeter, another shout erupted from the lake, but this time it was different. A woman's voice, clear and melodic, but chilling all the same. "Help me!" I stopped, heart racing. "What is happening?" I barked, scanning the area for any sign of danger. My son clung to me like a lifeline. I felt their eyes on me, pleading and scared. "Dad, we have to go, please," he urged. The forest around us felt alive, whispering and breathing. It was as if it had stories to tell that I never wanted to hear. I looked over my shoulder again. Behind the trees, the unnerving shadow shifted, almost as if it were beckoning me closer. "No!" I shouted. "We're leaving!" With one final glance at the lake, I turned and pushed them all forward. My heart raced as we cut through the camp, desperately searching for any sign of our car. Then I heard it again, more distinct this time, the woman's voice rising above the chaos. "Help me!" I gritted my teeth and ran faster, determined to shield my family from what else this forest hid. But deep down, I felt the grip of something ancient and dark tightening around us. I was sure that if I looked back, I wouldn't like what I'd see.
We sped into the campsite, panic surging through me. Each face around me reflected the terror I felt. I pulled my wife and kids closer, searching for the path that would lead us back to safety. The towering trees loomed like giants, their gnarled branches resembling skeletal hands trying to hold us back. In the frenzy, I caught sight of the old oak tree near the clearing's edge. Its thick trunk seemed to call to me, a promise of something stable in this chaos. "Let's head to the oak!" I shouted, trying to keep our focus sharp. "Dad, what if it comes?" my son whispered, his voice trembling. "I won't let anything happen to you," I promised, though the words felt hollow even as I said them. My heart hammered as I glimpsed movement out of the corner of my eye, something shifting among the trees. A cold sweat broke out on my skin. "Keep moving," I urged. We reached the oak, its bark rough against my back as I pressed my family against it. I looked down, checking on my daughter, whose tiny hands clutched onto my jeans. "Are we safe here?" she asked, her wide eyes searching my face for reassurance. "For now," I said, though doubt crept in. I turned to my wife, gauging her fear. "We have to keep looking for the car." Suddenly, a low growl echoed from the depths of the forest, a sound that was both animalistic and otherworldly. I froze, scanning the shadows. Then I remembered the stories I had heard around campfires, legends of a creature, La Siguabana, that would draw you in, promising help only to ensnare you in its web. Then everything shifted. A figure emerged from the mist at the lake's edge. It wasn't the woman I'd imagined. This was something far worse. A tall, gaunt shape, cloaked in shadows, moving with unnatural grace. It paused, head tilting as if it had caught our scent. "Did you see that?" I whispered, backing away from the tree, my back prickling with fear. My family huddled closer, and I could hear my son's short, panicked breaths. I glanced toward the lake once more. That voice echoed again, taunting me. "Help me!" "Don't listen!" I shouted, clenching my fists. I glanced back at the woods, feeling the ancient darkness closing in. "We have to get out, now!" Just then, a loud crash erupted to our left, sending the birds scattering. A pile of rocks tumbled down near the lake. Whatever it was close, and it was angry. I grabbed my family's hands, pulling them away from the tree. "Run!" I shouted. As we stumbled over roots and rocks, panic sharpened my senses. I didn't dare look back. I could feel the weight of that shadow chasing us. "Don't stop!" I yelled, even as my heart raced and my legs threatened to give out. And that's when I saw it, a flicker of light at the far end of the clearing. A beam piercing the darkness, flickering like a hope that refused to die. "Over there!" I pointed, my stomach twisting with a desperate mixture of fear and hope. We darted toward the light, praying we weren't running into another trap. But as the shadows stretched out behind us, I couldn't shake the sense that whatever lurked in those trees was gaining ground. The race wasn't just against time, but against a nightmare unleashed. We sprinted toward the light, my breath coming in ragged bursts. Each step was a gamble, my instincts screaming at me to keep moving, to not look back. The forest seemed alive, branches whipping at us as though trying to pull us back into its grasp. When we finally broke into the clearing, the glow was brighter than I anticipated. It came from an old lantern, its glass cracked but still burning. A battered picnic table sat nearby, cluttered with remnants of forgotten meals. But the sight of it filled me with dread. Why was there a lantern out here? "Stay close," I instructed, searching the perimeter. The light flickered ominously, casting strange shadows that danced across the ground. The momentary safety felt like a mirage, too fragile to trust. "Over there," my wife whispered, pointing towards a narrow path behind the picnic table. I nodded, moving toward it, but hesitation struck. It felt like an invitation to danger. The low growl from the woods rumbled again, closer now, and I gripped my family's hands tighter. We couldn't stay exposed. "Should we wait for help?" My son's voice trembled as he looked at me, his eyes filled with fear. "No," I snapped, frustration boiling over. I didn't want to be the one to lead us into danger, yet here I was, desperately needing to make a choice. We need to move, now. We darted to the path, my daughter's small body pressed against my side. As we crossed the threshold of the clearing, the shadow behind us seemed to pause, as if contemplating whether to pursue. I could almost feel its gaze, heavy and predatory. The path was narrow, overgrown on either side. I stumbled a bit, the roots tangling around my feet. Panic surged again as I heard the crunch of leaves behind us. "Faster," I urged, pushing my family ahead of me. Then I heard it, a voice, clear and haunting, echoing through the trees. "Help me, please." I looked back, my blood running cold. "We can't stop," I shouted, pulling my son forward. But the voice wrapped around us, pulling at my mind, urging me to turn around. "Dad," my son cried, tears streaming down his cheeks. "What if we leave someone behind?" The power of the voice was magnetic, a sickening sweetness in its call. I gritted my teeth, shaking my head. It's not real. It wants to trick us. Just then, a flash of movement caught my eye. It was swift, darting between the trees. A moment later, I saw her, a young woman, pale and threadbare, her face smeared with dirt. "Help me," she begged again, reaching towards us. My instincts screamed to run, but my heart faltered. Could she really need help? "Don't!" I yelled, feeling the tug of the shadows behind me. "It's a trap." But my warning came too late. The moment I hesitated, my wife instinctively took a step forward. Then everything turned chaotic. The shadows surged, rolling in on us like a tidal wave. In that moment of terror, clarity hit me. I had to protect my family, no matter what. I turned, gathering them close. "We're leaving, now!" I shouted, urgency lacing my voice. But as we ran deeper into the dense woods, the shadows wouldn't relent. And just when I thought we might evade them, I felt it. Cold fingers wrapping around my ankle, pulling me down into the darkness. That's when I heard it, the voice calling again, more desperate and chilling than before. "Please, help me." My heart raced. What had I unleashed? The darkness swallowed us as I fell, the weight of my body pulling me downward, while the shadows pulled me with a ferocity I'd never known. I braced myself, instinctively tightening my grip around my family, but I could feel my ankle slipping from the cold grasp. My heart pounded as I fought against it. "Dad, no!" My son's voice cut through the chaos like a desperate plea, filled with panic.
The last image I recalled was their terrified faces, illuminated only by the faint, flickering lantern light behind us. I tried to shout back, but my voice fell flat in the consuming dark. In a frantic surge of adrenaline, I kicked at whatever held me. The grip loosened, and I scrambled to thrust my body forward, forcing myself up onto my feet again. I turned, breathless, ready to pull them back into safety. But as I looked, only darkness surrounded me. "Where are you?" I called out, my voice trembling. "Marissa! Ethan!" "Mom!" My daughter's voice came back, faint and shaky. Relief washed over me, but fear clawed at my insides. I could see nothing but trees around us, gnarled and twisted, their branches reaching out like skeletal hands. Without thinking, I plunged deeper into the shadows, drawn back to the sound of their voices. "Follow my voice," I urged, straining to keep my own fear in check. For a breathless moment, I scanned the area, heart racing as I listened for their footsteps, the crunch of leaves beneath their feet. And then I saw it, a glimmer of light, soft and inviting, flickering just ahead. I rushed towards it, hoping it was a way out. The moment I entered the clearing, however, the hair on the back of my neck stood up. It wasn't the lantern from before. This one was brighter, casting an eerie glow around a circle of stones. "Why is it here?" I muttered, eyes darting. It felt wrong. Then I heard it, the whispering voice again, floating through the air. "Help us, please." The tone was different this time, layered with a sense of desperation. I felt the urge to turn, to see, but I couldn't let my curiosity guide me. "Ethan! Marissa!" I shouted, fear now a tight knot in my chest. I stepped closer to the light. "Where are you?" As I moved, the shadows stiffened around me, their edges darkening as if angered by my presence.
The whispers grew louder, merging into a chorus of desperate pleas. "Please, help us!" I felt a presence too close, not just a shadow, but something cold and tangible lurking just behind my shoulder. I turned, adrenaline pushing me to confront whatever creature was pursuing us. In that instant, something sharp stung my arm, and I gasped, yanking my arm back. A thin tendril of shadow, almost like an elongated piece of smoke, recoiled from me with a low growl. A dread washed over me, and a thought crashed into my mind. The legends I had heard growing up, stories of La Siguabana, the forest spirit said to trap the lost. With renewed urgency, I tore my gaze from the light. "We need to get out, now!" I shouted again, and just as I turned to the direction I last saw my family, I stumbled into a wall of darkness. The energy in the air shifted, vibrating with a threatening intensity. I took a step back, my heart pounding. This was not the way out. Someone was watching. Something was waiting. And then, as if sensing my fear, the shadows closed in tighter around me, and the voices transformed into anguished screams. That's when I realized there was no escape. I stood frozen for a heartbeat. The darkness shifted, pulsating like a living thing. My instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs felt weighted, heavy. I wanted to turn back, to find the way out, but the memories of my family's faces pushed me forward. I couldn't abandon them. "Ethan! Marissa!" I yelled into the dark again, fighting against the rising panic in my chest. My fingers trembled as I clutched at the air, hoping to grasp something solid. I took a cautious step, then another, bracing for whatever came next. The whispers became a symphony of torment, a haunting melody that reverberated around me. "Help us! Help!" Each plea felt like a knife digging deeper into my resolve. Did I really want to find out who or what needed help? Then the ground shifted beneath me, sending a shiver down my spine. It was as if the very earth beneath was alive, undulating like a heartbeat. I swallowed hard and pressed on, searching for any sign of my children. I stumbled, my foot catching on a tangled root. I fell forward, landing on my hands with a grunt. As I pushed myself up, my hand brushed against something cool and smooth. My heart raced as I recognized it. A stone, part of the same circle I had seen earlier. The glow brightened, casting long shadows that flickered like flames. I half turned back, that familiar voice calling out again. "Help us!" "Who are you?" I shouted into the shadows, my voice shaking. "What do you want?" "Help!" the voice whispered back, the desperation palpable. I couldn't tell if it came from ahead or behind. "Free us!" I shook my head, trying to dispel the dread that threatened to engulf me. "Ethan! Marissa!" I shouted once more, desperate to find them before it was too late.
Suddenly, from behind the stones, a figure emerged, cloaked in shadow, its form shifting and twisting like smoke. My breath caught in my throat. It looked humanoid, yet alien, its limbs elongated unnaturally, shifting like branches swaying in a storm. "No, no," I breathed, instinct pulling me to back away. This was the spirit, La Siguabana. Fear tightened around me like a noose, suffocating and relentless. But beneath that fear, a flicker of understanding ignited. The whispers, the cries, they weren't just warnings. They were cries for salvation. Something about that shadow resonated with the stories I had heard growing up, tales of those lost to the forest. Could I help them? The figure paused, its gaze locking onto me. My heart thundered in my chest, blood roaring in my ears. I couldn't help feel a strange bond, a connection that sent chills down my spine. "Please," it urged, voice like a breeze through leaves. In that split second, I focused past the panic. "Show me where they are," I demanded, feeling a surge of determination. At my utterance, the figure's deeper shadow surged toward the darkness around me. It felt more like an invitation than a threat. I saw images flash before my eyes. Darkness, twisted trees, and finally, two small figures trapped amidst the chaos. Then, without warning, the ground erupted. The shadows churned violently, and the forest began to shift and breathe around me. I stumbled and fell to one knee, holding my ground as everything shook. "Help us!" the voices screamed, filling my ears with sorrow. That's when I realized it wasn't just my family I needed to save. I was now part of their world, and more importantly, I knew I had to make a choice. Would I stand and fight against the shadows, or would I give in, forever lost in the depths of La Siguabana? The shadows twisted and curled around me, a living tide that threatened to pull me under. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to block out the panic surging within me. "Ethan! Marissa!" I cried out again, my voice cracking. The ground trembled beneath me as the whispers intensified, shredding my courage. "Help us! Help!" But this time there was a new urgency behind those cries. It was not just a cry for aid. It felt like a warning, a plea that held something darker. I willed myself to stand, heart racing as I surveyed the chaos. The figure hovered nearby, its form shifting, flickering between reality and darkness. It pointed, a thin, elongated arm, guiding me deeper into the forest. "Follow." It barely seemed to breathe the word, but the authority in its voice was unmistakable. I hesitated, fear gnawing at me. "What if it's a trap?" I whispered under my breath. But who else could guide me? I had no choice. "Show me," I shouted, my pulse quickening with each moment spent in this nightmarish realm. The spirit glided forward, and my instinct screamed at me to flee. I fought against that impulse, forcing one foot in front of the other. The darkness shifted again, and with each step I took, it felt like 1,000 eyes were watching me, hungry, waiting. Just as I thought I was gaining my bearings, an ear-splitting shriek echoed through the trees. It was a sound I'd never heard before, neither animal nor human. I stumbled, glancing behind me in terror. I could see shapes moving in the dark, shadows clashing and swaying like a furious storm. "Ethan!" I yelled once more, drowning in desperation. "Marissa!" The figure beside me turned, its gaze piercing through the night, faint yet filled with a strange urgency. "They are close," it said, its voice barely a whisper, "but the darkness seeks to keep them." Suddenly, the ground lurched beneath my feet again. A chilling wind swept through the clearing, sending leaves spiraling upwards. I felt a coldness wrap around me, pulling me deeper into dread. Fear gripped me harder than before. "What do you mean?" I gasped. "What do I have to do?" "Free them. Break the bond," it whispered, its voice laced with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. I trembled at its words, unsure of what it truly meant. The sounds of my children's pleas faded into a haunting melody that twisted through the trees, calling me toward what I feared, but also driving my resolve. I had to reach them. I had to save them. That's when I saw it, a glimmer along the forest floor, catching the faint light filtering through branches. A small object, half buried in the dirt. My heart raced as I grasped it, feeling the weight of hope and despair collide. It was a bracelet, one I recognized. It belonged to Marissa. "No!" I screamed, the despair crashing over me like waves. "Not my kids!" The choking darkness began to thin, and I felt the pull of the forest intensify. But with the bracelet in my grasp, I sensed my connection to my children reigniting. The whispers clawed at my mind as the figure urged me on. "Do you accept your fate?" it asked, its tone both ominous and solemn. I swallowed hard, clutching the bracelet tightly. It was a bond, a promise I refused to break. "I won't leave them!" I cried defiantly, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. With the darkness swirling around me, I stepped forward, determined to find my family. But as I moved, something loomed behind me, a greater threat awakening. I glanced back just in time to see 2 glowing eyes emerge from the shadows. It was time to confront my worst fear. The glowing eyes locked onto mine, their fierce light searing through the dark. My heart raced, and for a moment I froze, paralyzed by the looming dread. The figure beside me flickered, as if uncertain about the threat now stalking us. "Run!" it urged, its voice gaining a shred of urgency. I didn't need to be told twice. I dashed deeper into the forest, the bracelet clutched tightly in my hand. Branches lashed at my arms, and roots threatened to trip me with every hurried step. The darkness closed in around me, a living presence seemingly intent on swallowing me whole. Behind me, I heard it, a low growl that reverberated through the ground, shaking me to my core. It was coming closer, stalking me through the maze of trees. I risked a glance over my shoulder, and my blood ran cold. The eyes were no longer just flickers in the shadows. They were massive and filled with an intent that sent shivers down my spine.
I pushed harder, weaving through the trees as I focused on the sound of my children's voices still calling out to me. "Ethan! Marissa!" I shouted, desperation boiling my determination. As I moved, something fierce and sharp lanced through my side. I stumbled, feeling a searing pain where a jagged branch had torn through my clothing, drawing blood. I gasped, but pressed on. I couldn't let fear overtake me, couldn't falter now. Then the air changed. The whispers twisted into something darker and deeper, echoing as if the woods themselves were alive and angry at my intrusion. "You are not welcome here," they hissed, like a chorus of resentful spirits. I felt a heavy weight nestled in my chest, begging me to turn back, to escape while I still could. But images of Ethan and Marissa flooded my mind. Their laughter, their smiles, now twisted with anguish. I couldn't abandon them. My resolve hardened. The spectral figure appeared again, just ahead, guiding me. "Follow," it urged, its form more substantial now, solidified by urgency. I chased after it, hoping, praying that it would lead me to my children. Suddenly, a massive shape lunged at me from the shadows. It collided into my side, knocking me to the ground. My breath left me, and I felt the cool dirt beneath me, the forest floor absorbing my fear. I managed to roll onto my back, staring up at the looming creature. It was unlike anything I had ever seen, a monstrous blend of darkness and fury, its eyes glowing like embers in the night. I could feel its breath on my skin, hot and rancid. "Leave," it growled, its voice like thunder rumbling through the air. Panic surged within me as I struggled to scramble away. My fingers brushed against the bracelet as I hefted myself up, willing every ounce of strength into a final fight. "I won't!" I screamed, fueled by desperation. "You can't take them!" In that moment, a bright light exploded from the bracelet, illuminating the clearing. Shadows recoiled, the monstrous figure wavering as the glow enveloped us. It howled, a sound of agony as the darkness around me began to split. I couldn't believe my eyes. The shadows were retreating, leaving behind only the tendrils of darkness that clawed desperately at the fading light. As I turned my gaze forward, the figure stood steady beside me, its presence no longer menacing, but comforting. "Now," it urged, as the ground shook, something was coming, a force more powerful than what I had faced. "Ethan!" I called again, feeling the urgency swell inside me. I had to find my children. The bond we shared, it was the key. I took a deep breath, ready to face whatever came next. But as I prepared to charge into the light, I heard another voice mingling with the whispers, a voice I recognized but didn't want to believe. Mom? My heart plummeted. They were here, but were they safe? The world around me seemed to vibrate with a mixture of fear and hope. The forest, alive with its ancient whispers, pressed in around us, but I was resolute. I had to find Ethan and Marissa before it was too late. With the light from the bracelet flickering at my side, I summoned all the courage I could find. "Stay close," I called to the flickering figure, my spirit still tethered to the warmth of my children's voices. But before I could set off, the shadows writhed and darkened around me, and the monstrous presence I had sensed before loomed once again. "Help me, please," a voice echoed, haunting and familiar, twisting my gut with dread. It was a lure, promising salvation, yet steeped in uncertainty. I shook my head, pushing the darkness out of my mind. I wasn't going to let it distract me this time. With new determination, I bolted into the dense brambles where the voice had come from.
The underbrush tore at my clothes, but I pressed on. "Ethan! Marissa!" I shouted, my voice racing through the murky air like a beacon. I caught sight of a vague shape ahead, a flash of movement. I dashed toward it, heart pounding. The flickering light from the bracelet illuminated the path before me, and with each step, the darkness around me seemed to shift, as if the forest was alive, aware, yet wary of my advance. Suddenly, I found myself at a clearing, and it struck me like a punch to the gut. There they were. My kids stood together, shadows gripping their small forms like chains. "Mom!" they cried in unison, eyes wide with fear. "Don't move!" I yelled, fighting the urge to lunge toward them. The air crackled with tension as I realized that moving too quickly might worsen whatever grip the shadows had on them. I needed a plan. "Stay where you are. I'm coming for you." But as I took one step forward, the monstrous shadow erupted from the trees, roaring in rage. It lunged, and I ducked just in time. "No!" I bellowed, the sound rising from somewhere primal within me. I clutched the bracelet, feeling its energy coursing through my veins. "Free them!" the flickering figure urged again, morphing closer, severing the shadow's grasp, if only for a moment. "Ethan! Marissa!" I shouted once more, desperation fueling my every movement. I could see them now, illuminated yet shrouded in darkness, their faces a blend of fear and trust. "Hold on! I'm coming!" I gripped tightly onto the energy coursing through me. The shadows recoiled as the bond between us solidified once more. Love, desperation, and power sinewed together. I took a deep breath and charged toward them, heart racing like a drum.
The moment I reached out to grab Ethan's hand, the force of the shadows surged against me, slamming into me with the weight of countless souls trapped within their grasp. I could feel their anguish, their longing to escape as much as my children's. But there was no time to falter. "Now!" I shouted, ripping away the darkness that bound them, believing strength surged through the connection. I felt warmth radiate from the bracelet and poured that energy into the very air around us. With my children in my arms, I turned to flee back through the dark, knowing full well the path wouldn't be easy. Shadows danced and twisted, clawing at my feet as I dragged Ethan and Marissa behind me, their faces lit by the gentle glow. "Run!" I shouted, fear gripping my throat like a vice. It felt like the world was collapsing, crashing in around us. As we sprinted, the ground trembled beneath us, the darkness howling in rage. I could feel the tendrils wrapping tighter around me, the monstrous figure looming ever closer with each hurried step. The whispers turned into shrieks, and a chilling wind blew, but I kept pushing, urging my children forward through the weaving forest. Just when I thought I couldn't go further, a gentle light pierced the darkness, a distant shimmer breaking through. "Keep moving, we're almost there," I urged, pulling my children along, their small hands burning with warmth in mine. But doubt clung to me, gnawing at the edges of my resolve. What if we weren't free? Would the shadows chase us forever? The figure appeared again, monstrous yet desperate, the sorrow and hate entwined. "You can't leave," it hissed. I could feel the chill of it all, the grip of something ancient and unforgiving pulling at my heels. "Get behind me," I commanded my children, and we raced towards the light, an exit from the labyrinth of despair. We broke through into the clearing that was no longer cloaked in shadows. My heart soared, but in that instant the shadows turned their full fury upon us. The monstrous form surged forward, bearing down as I shielded my children. I felt a rush of hope as I spotted the old oak, its gnarled trunk a sentinel in the twilight. "To the oak!" I shouted, and we dashed towards it, adrenaline surging just as the shadows enveloped everything behind us. We reached the tree, the moment racing in slow motion. I panted the words with trembling urgency. "We're safe here." But I could hear the chaos closing in, the whispers forming into a wild cacophony. As I pressed my family against the oak, the light from the bracelet flickered, a dying ember in the face of a darkened forest. The shadows howled, their voices roaring in anguished cries. "You cannot escape," they shrieked, and I felt their ominous presence thrumming in the air. Yet within my chest a new kind of warmth began to bloom, one that transcended fear and despair. My children clung to me tightly, radiating their trust with every gasp. "Together," I whispered to them, "a bond stronger than the stranglehold of darkness. We break this together." I reached out, gathering the light from the bracelet, and with every ounce of love, desperation, and defiance I had, I shouted, "We are more than you!" In that moment, the shadows reeled back, and the whispers transformed into a promise, a soft chorus of hope that cradled us with understanding. The forest trembled around us, and a blinding light erupted from the bracelet, illuminating everything. And as it enveloped us, the darkness began to fracture. I held myself and my children close, the world around us fading into nothingness. In that blinding light, so beautiful and consuming, I felt a surge of freedom. Then, silence. When I opened my eyes, we were back by the car. The sun splashed against the horizon. The forest stood still behind us, a lingering presence, but the air felt lighter, almost full of promise. I turned to my children, who stared back wide-eyed but unharmed, a bond forever changed between us. "Did we—" Ethan began, but I shook my head, holding a finger to my lips. There were questions still lingering, but some answers would remain buried deep in the forest, shrouded by its ancient whispers. I could still feel the forest watching, and I knew we'd never truly be free of its call. "Let's get in the car," I urged, heart still racing. As we drove away, and the trees melted into the distance, I couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness hadn't entirely vanished. Maybe one day it would call again. But for now, we were safe. And that small flicker of light, my love for my family, was enough.